In August of 1936, Blom and Voss shipyards laid down a ship which would be named Adolf Hitler. The ship measured 684 feet long and 77 feet wide, which by that time was relatively small. In May of 1937, she was launched. During this time, the name was changed to Wilhelm Gustloff after the leader of the NS party who had been assassinated a year prior. When completed, she topped in at 25,400 gross registered tons, which was a little less than half of the largest ships in the world at that time. After completing her sea trials in March of 1938, she was finally handed over to her owners. In the beginning of her career, Wilhelm Gustloff served as the flagship of the KDF, or Strength Through Joy cruises. Her purpose was to provide activities for German workers and functionaries, such as cruises, concerts, meetings, and holiday retreats. In March of 1938, she made her unofficial maiden voyage, carrying mostly Austrians in an attempt to get them to vote for annexation to Germany. A few days later, she departed on her second voyage from Blom and Voss shipyards for a 3-day cruise. This time around, though, she carried workers and their families. During the third voyage around the North Sea, a storm with up to 62-mile-per-hour winds formed. Wilhelm Gustloff was traveling with 3 other cruise ships, but during the storm they got separated. Meanwhile, a small cargo ship by the name Pagaway departed from Hamburg and a few hours later got caught up in the storm. Much of the cargo she was carrying got blown off the deck, and eventually she lost maneuverability. The captain, knowing that the ship was doomed, signaled an SOS, and the closest ship in the area happened to be the Wilhelm Gustloff. She reached Pagaway at 6 a.m. off the coast of the Netherlands and quickly launched Lifeboat 1 to assist. The lifeboat and her 12 crew were unable to assist, though, as the rough waves battered the lifeboat. Because of this, Lifeboat 6 was launched, which had a motor, making it much easier to help. By 7:45 a.m., much of the crew had been rescued. By this time, a Dutch tugboat had arrived to assist, but it was too late. Pagaway rolled to port and sank. In April of 1938, Wilhelm Gustloff departed Hamburg for England. She anchored 3 miles away from Tilbury in order to remain in international waters, which allowed her to be a voting station for Germans and Austrians who lived in England. Afterwards, she sailed back to Hamburg. On the 21st of April, she made her official main voyage, cruising through the Madeira Islands with 3 other ships joining in later. During the voyage, Captain Lubb, a 58 years old, died of a heart attack and had to be replaced by Frederick Peterson for the remainder of the voyage. From May of 1939 to June, she would diverge from her usual cruising duties and would instead transport soldiers across Europe following the Spanish Civil War. This added up to a total of 60 voyages, carrying 80,000 passengers. On September 2, 1939, World War II was officially declared, and Wilhelm Gustloff was instantly converted into a hospital ship. For over a year, she served this role, all the way up until 1940, when she was repainted from her hospital ship colors and the medical supplies were removed. For 4 years, Wilhelm Gustloff would remain in port, being only used as a barrack ship for U-boat trainees in Division II. Coincidentally, in 1942, the SS Arcona was used as the RMS Titanic and a German version of her sinking, with the Wilhelm Gustloff offering up her trainees to play the passengers. Eventually, she was put back into service and would take part in Operation Hannibal, which was the naval evacuation of German troops and civilians from Poland as the Russian army pushed forwards. Her job would be a daring one, as transporting this many passengers would be very risky. Plans started to be drawn out, and eventually the safest route was plotted. The voyage would be captained by Frederick Peterson, among 3 other captains who had been with her in the past. During the voyage, she would be escorted by 1 merchant vessel and 2 torpedo boats. Finally, she would carry a total of 6,050 people on board, which was much more than she was ever designed for. On the 30th of January, 1945, boarding for the Wilhelm Gustloff had begun, and at first it was all going well. As the minutes went on, though, more and more tension was rising, and by 12 p.m., the crew couldn't hold back the massive crowd trying to get on board. In order to stop the crowd, Captain Frederick Peterson ordered the ship to move away from port, so that boarding could proceed via tugboat only. At 12:30, Wilhelm Gustloff departed Danzig with 10,582 passengers and crew, even though she was only designed to carry around 2,000. This made for no room on board, with every part of the ship packed with passengers. Very quickly, problems started to emerge. The passenger liner Hansa and 1 torpedo boat developed mechanical problems and had to turn back, leaving the ship with only 1 torpedo boat being low. On top of that, most passengers were not wearing their lifeboats, as it was very hot and humid. This all coordinated to a not-so-desirable voyage, and heading into the night, it would only get worse. The 4 captains would disagree on the best course of action many times. For one, they had to decide on which route to take. Captain Frederick insisted on going in deep water in order to avoid mines, while Captain Wilhelm, who had been a submariner, insisted on heading into shallow water in order to avoid being spotted by a Russian submarine. In the end, Captain Frederick was the lead captain and gave the final order to head into deep water in the main shipping route. During the night, Frederick was informed of an incoming German minesweeper convoy, and because of this, he turned on his navigation lights to avoid an accidental collision. This made the ship an easy target, though, as it would give away her position to any passing subs. Even though Wilhelm Gustloff had been marked as a hospital ship in the past, she was now armed with anti-aircraft guns and was carrying leaders of war, which did make it legal for an enemy to sink her if they met. At around 9 p.m., Soviet submarine S-13 spotted her and quickly moved into attack. It fired 3 torpedoes at Gustloff, with the 4th one getting jammed. The first torpedo struck the ship's bow, sealing the watertight doors and trapping many crew members. The second torpedo struck the women's accommodations, located in the drained swimming pool. Out of the 373 women quartered there, only 3 survived. The third torpedo scored a direct hit on the engine room, which disabled all power and communications for the ship. Almost instantly, there was a panic, with passengers getting trampled as they tried to get on the boat deck, many of which were killed. In the next 20 minutes, Wilhelm Gustloff was listing hard to port, making it impossible to launch any of the starboard side lifeboats. Even the port side lifeboats, though, were frozen over and had to be cut away instead of lowered. Horst Roy and his mother were on one of these lifeboats, which had frozen over in the process of lowering. Before he had boarded the Wilhelm Gustloff, he had stolen a jackknife from his uncle. He just happened to have it in his pocket, and was able to cut the lifeboat free, saving his mother as well as many other passengers in the process. In 40 minutes, Wilhelm Gustloff was laying on her side. The torpedo boat T-36 had arrived, among low M-387, M-375, M-341, and many more of the minesweeper convoy. Many of the passengers and crew had jumped overboard, much of them freezing in the Baltic water. At 10:18 p.m., Wilhelm Gustloff made her final plunge, with the stern rising out of the water and finally going under. The destroyers and minesweepers did the best they could to help, but still had to worry about the Soviet submarine lurking in the water below. When they reached land, they were finally able to do a head count for the survivors. Out of the 10,582 passengers and crew on board, 1,252 were saved. Throughout the next 20 years, Soviet divers would dive to the wreck, removing anything of value, including all human activity. It was only when the Soviet Union fell that German divers were finally able to explore the wreck. As of now, her wreck lying in 144 feet of water stands as a grim reminder of the horrible destruction caused by World War II.